Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into your rough woolen tunic and waking up on a straw mattress inside a stone dormitory that smells like damp books, wet wool, and exactly 1 bar of shared medieval soap. Your feet are cold, the window's just a rectangle of frost, and someone is already ringing the bell for morning prayers. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who else is trying to fall asleep to dead languages and questionable breakfast routines. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge down the echoing stone hall, sandals scuffing the flagstones. It's not quite dawn, and everything's coated in a bluish pre-sun chill that seems to settle inside your bones. You yawn, but quietly. Talking is frowned upon before matins, which means you now have about 20 silent minutes to run your Latin conjugations before the master starts asking questions. Amo, amas, amat. You mutter it rhythmically under your breath like a prayer, not because it's sacred, but because it might keep your jaw from freezing. You're about 11, maybe 12, and this is your 3rd winter at the cathedral school. You can already feel your toes trying to go numb. You clutch your wax tablet in one hand, the surface scratched with yesterday's vocabulary list. The stylus is tucked behind your ear, until you realize you slept on it again, and it's now embedded in your hair like a cursed hairpin. Downstairs in the chapel, your classmates are kneeling, fidgeting, or sneakily whispering endings of irregular verbs. The rule is, no food until after prime. No mistakes if you want to avoid being called a goose-brained dolt. Or worse, being made to copy the Psalter 10 times in cramped, icy script. As the cantor begins chanting, you glance sideways at Thomas. Thomas is always early. He's already mouthing the morning prayers in perfect cadence while occasionally correcting himself in a whisper. You suspect he's memorized the Vulgate just for fun. You sort of hate Thomas, but mostly you want to be him. Or at least you want his gloves. You follow the rhythm of the Latin, slipping into that half-sung, half-chanted zone, where words float without quite settling. It's calming, if you don't mess up, and you definitely don't want to mess up this week. The bishop is visiting, and rumor has it he might sit in on lessons. No pressure. Now back in the schoolroom, it's just you, the master, and 30 shivering boys trying not to sniffle too loudly. The benches are hard. The rules are harder. There are no textbooks. Not really. If you want to read something, you memorize it. If you want to write something, you memorize that too. And if you forget it, well, there's always stable duty. The first thing out of your master's mouth today, conjugatio secunda, modo indicativo, praesens tempus. Go. He snaps his fingers. The boy next to you flinches, then starts muttering the passive forms of docio like his life depends on it. It kind of does. That's the thing about medieval schooling. Before you learn anything about the world, you learn the skeleton of its language. Not for fun, not for conversation, but because the entire scholastic universe is held together by verbs, cases, and the assumption that you might one day read Augustine without crying. And speaking of tears, your nose is now fully frozen. This morning's subject? Latin conjugation drills. You begin with regular verbs, those blessed predictable ones. First conjugation, amare. Second, docere. Third, legere. Fourth, audire. Then the weird ones, esse, posse, velle, the ones that do whatever they want like tiny linguistic rebels. The master paces slowly, hands folded in his sleeves. He smells like chalk, boiled leeks, and authority. Occasionally, he smacks his pointer against the lectern when someone drops a syllable. And he always knows who dropped the syllable. Your turn comes. You stand, adjust your robe, and clear your throat with all the confidence of someone who absolutely did not sleep through half of yesterday's drills. You begin. Dosher, doceris, dositur. Someone behind you whispers the fourth line too early. You hesitate. You panic. You skip to the wrong tense. The master sighs. Somewhere in the heavens, Cicero weeps. You sit back down, cheeks red and ears hotter than your breath. But at least you didn't get sent to the chicken coop like last week's Praeceptus skippers. And here's the kicker. Scholars still argue whether these rote memorization drills actually helped students understand Latin, or just turned them into flesh-covered repetition machines. Either way, you don't get a say. You're here to chant, not question. Eventually, the bell rings for prime, and the classroom exhales. Not because you're done, but because breakfast is only one more subject away. You tuck your tablet under your arm and stretch your fingers, one of them stiff from holding your stylus too tight. You glance toward the window. The sun is finally climbing over the cloister wall. Light hits the frost on the glass like powdered gold. And tomorrow, you'll do this all again. By the time your feet thaw, you're already knee-deep in grammar, the real kind, not the friendly stuff they teach kids with picture books. No, this is the Ars Minor of Aelius Donatus, the 4th century Roman who ruined childhoods across 1,000 years with one deceptively slim Latin primer. Your master holds the book like it's holy, and in a way, it is. Everyone from Charlemagne to Chaucer's grammar boy cut their teeth on this. You, too, must face the sacred terror of Donatus. His brisk, no-nonsense definitions, his total lack of humor, and his charming insistence that everything in the universe fits into 8 parts of speech. So here you sit, back straight, knees stiff, mouthing answers to imaginary questions you know are coming. What is a noun? You answer before being asked. Nomen est pars orationis cum casu, significans rem corporeum aut in corporeum. You don't understand it, not entirely. But that's not the point. Understanding comes much later, maybe when you're a monk, maybe when you're dead. For now, your job is to know it by heart. Donatus asks the questions. You memorize the answers. It's a dialogue, technically, but one you hold entirely in your own mouth. How many declensions? 5. Give me the first. And so begins the waterfall. Rosa, rosai, rosai, rosam, rosa, rosa. This rose has thorns. It stabs you in the brain at 5 a.m. You've recited it so often that sometimes you whisper Rosa in your sleep. Your roommate says you conjugated your dreams last week. You do not deny this. You scribble another line on your wax tablet with your stylus, the letters looking like tiny ants having an argument. The surface is already worn thin, and there's an awkward patch where yesterday's verb drills dug too deep and left a crater. To your left, a boy is working on adjectives. He's murmuring, bonus, bona, bonum, over and over like he's casting a spell. He might be. At this hour, everything feels vaguely mystical. Then, the master claps once. A hush. You freeze, stylus mid-scratch. Who here, he says, can decline the word Rex in all its cases without melting into a puddle of failure? You try to look both confident and invisible. An ancient student survival tactic. He picks the smallest boy in the class. The boy stands. His voice is steady. Rex, Regis, Regi, Regem, Rege. He makes it to the plural before faltering. Reges, Regum, Regibus, Reges, Regis. Wrong. He sits, crushed. The master tuts. If you confuse Regibus with Regis, he says, you might as well crown the wrong king. Then he adds almost to himself, though that has happened. Ask England. A few older boys chuckle. You do not. You are too busy mentally reviewing Dominus, Domini, Domino. There are debates among modern scholars about whether Donatus was meant for children, or if medieval students were simply built differently. Tougher, colder, sleepier, and expected to memorize entire grammatical systems before their first hot meal. Some argue grammar was a form of spiritual discipline. Others that it was just the easiest way to weed out future heretics. If you couldn't survive Donatus, you certainly couldn't survive Aquinas. But not all grammar was dry. You remember yesterday's accidental comedy, when someone misdeclined poor and somehow called himself the accusative of a fishmonger. Even the master cracked a smile, briefly. Today, though, there's no mercy. You're on participles now. You scribble amans, amantis, loving. Then docens, docentis, teaching. Then the dreaded ions, iuntis, going. Why is the participle of ire so weird? Historians still argue whether this was linguistic drift or Latin's way of reminding you that some things just don't follow the rules. Like the master's sense of humor. You shift on the bench. Your back is stiff. The boy behind you keeps whispering the ablative plural like it's a secret code. Roses, roses, roses. The master walks past, robes brushing the floor. He peers at your tablet, grunts approvingly, then moves on. You exhale slowly. No rebuke. That's a win. A fly buzzes near the window. It's the loudest thing in the room until someone sneezes and gets glared into silence. You glance outside. The frost has melted from the glass and the courtyard is waking. A sleepy monk walks past with a basket of laundry. Somewhere, a donkey brays like it just discovered its voice. But inside, grammar continues. Because if Latin is the skeleton of learning, then grammar is the marrow, and Donatus is your drill sergeant. Eventually, the master signals the end of the session with a single word. Enough. You don't cheer. That's forbidden. But your spine straightens. Your stomach growls. Breakfast must be near. Just one more hurdle. Maybe two. You pack away your tablet, the wax smudging slightly where you accidentally elbowed it. Your fingers are stained with soot from the ink pot. Your robe smells faintly of tallow and ink, and your brain feels full of declensions stacked like furniture in a tiny attic. You survived Donatus today. Tomorrow he will return. Rhetoric waits for no stomach. Before you get bread, you get Cicero. That's the rule. Not because Cicero is nourishing, though your master swears he feeds the mind, but because rhetoric is what separates the beasts from the scholars, and apparently, breakfast from basic dignity. The benches have been rearranged slightly. The master stands in the middle now, cloak pinned back, gesturing with a goosefeather quill like he's about to conduct an orchestra, if that orchestra were entirely composed of half-asleep boys pretending to understand Roman politics. He begins. Today, you are each senator of the Roman Republic. You will argue whether Lucius Sergius Catilina was a traitor or a tragic patriot. You blink. Isn't this the man who tried to overthrow the Roman government? Didn't Cicero rant about it in 4 entire speeches? You flip open your wax tablet and jot the opening line from yesterday. Quo usque tandem abutere, Catilina, patientia nostra. How long, O Catiline, will you abuse our patience? It's a rhetorical question. You've learned this is Latin for, I'm about to yell at you, but in the fanciest way possible. You and your classmates must now take turns reciting passages from the Catilinarian orations, but not like drones. Oh no, you are to declaim them. With emotion, you are to channel outrage. to adopt Cicero's posture, to deliver invective like a man who's been personally betrayed by a toga-wearing villain. The boy beside you tries it. He raises his voice. He even throws in a dramatic hand fling. But he forgets the rhythm halfway through and calls the Senate a nest of angry geese instead of guardians of the Republic. The class stifles giggles. He sits down, red-faced. The master writes something in a small book. No one knows what that book is, but you never want to be in it. Your turn. You rise, adjust your sleeves, and try to summon the ghost of Cicero into your underfed 12-year-old frame. Your voice, o tempora, o mores. You don't really know what the times or customs are doing wrong, but the phrase has such flair, such thundering disdain, that it feels good to say, like you're airing ancient grievances without any personal consequences. And here's the thing. This isn't just performance. It's survival training. Historians argue whether these rhetorical drills were meant to produce real orators or just extremely disciplined parrots. Either way, you're expected to memorize long chunks of Roman speeches, then deliver them like your social life depends on it. Which, in medieval school, it kind of does. Impress the master, you get more parchment. Flub your lines, and you're back to verb drills with cold porridge for lunch. But rhetoric isn't only Cicero. There's rhetorica ad herennium, a kind of how-to guide for arguing like a civilized person. It tells you how to build an argument, how to appeal to emotion, and, critically, how to insult your opponent in a way that makes the audience laugh and think you're clever. You've memorized the 5 parts of classical rhetoric: inventio, dispositio, elocutio, memoria, pronunciatio. Invention, arrangement, style, memory, delivery. Each has its own sub-rules, and each must be practiced before food. Your favorite is elocutio, style, because that's where the jokes live. Yes, jokes. Even Cicero made them. One time he called someone a man with more tongue than brains. You wrote that down on your sleeve. There's a fringe theory among scholars that medieval students found this part of the curriculum fun. That somewhere in the folds of all that Latin and self-doubt, students enjoyed pretending to yell at Roman senators before dawn. Evidence. One 15th century marginal note in a student manuscript simply reads, "Master fell asleep, so I made the speech very angry." Today, the master asks you to compose a short argument, not to deliver yet, just to draft. The topic: should students be allowed to sit while reciting? You resist the urge to begin with o tempora again. That's too easy. Instead, you jot. It is known that a student who stands speaks more clearly, and a master who listens sitting may not notice errors creeping in like worms into apples. You like that bit about the worms. Very rhetorical. The master inspects your tablet. He nods slowly. Too many clauses, he says, but the image is fine. High praise. You will treasure this for a week. But the true challenge isn't what you write. It's how you remember it. You practice memoria by visualizing your argument as a mental house. The first sentence in the entryway, the second by the hearth, the third near the window. Later, when you declaim, you mentally walk through the house to retrieve your words. The method works, sort of. You once got stuck by the imaginary fireplace, forgot your closing line, and blurted something about Cicero liking soup. You still hear about it. And now, as the rhetoric session winds down, the master stands and gives his own impromptu speech. He chooses a topic close to your heart. Why breakfast must be earned through effort. It's persuasive, it's painful, it's peppered with phrases like virtues in labor and mens sana in corpore jejunum, a sound mind in an empty stomach. You suspect he made that last one up. Then, at last, the bell. Rhetoric ends. The benches creak. A few boys stretch, sheepishly proud of their Cicero impressions. You, meanwhile, clutch your tablet like a prize. Your fingers are stained with wax and soot. Your mind is buzzing with inventio. And your stomach is prepared to argue its own case before the kitchen gods. Your brain is full of Latin, but your belly is full of nothing. And now, before you get even a bite of barley bread, you must face your greatest foe yet. Logic. Single. You do not know hunger until you've sat through a lecture on syllogistic form while your stomach gurgles loud enough to distract the front row. The topic today? Universals and particulars. Also, whether imaginary animals have souls. Welcome to the morning's fourth subject, where reason itself is on trial. You sit back down on the same unforgiving bench, your tunic bunched beneath your knees, and the master lights the stub of a tallow candle despite it being full daylight. Symbolic, he says, logic sheds light on confusion. You're not sure it's working. He begins. If all humans are mortal, and you are a human, what follows? You respond automatically. Therefore, I am mortal. Correct. Now replace human with donkey. You pause. But I'm not a... Replace it. If all donkeys are mortal, and I am a donkey... The boys snicker. Then I am mortal. You finish grimacing. The master doesn't smile. This is not comedy. This is clarity. Sure. You flip your wax tablet and begin copying the diagram he's drawn in chalk, overlapping circles, labeled A, B, and C. He calls it a syllogistic wheel. You call it a hunger spiral. Logic is the art of reasoning correctly, or at least of sounding like you know what you're talking about when you stand up and say things like, "A cannot be B if B is never not C." No one understands that sentence, but it sounds important. Today's special topic is substances versus accidents. You love this one in the way someone might love a recurring headache. A substance is a thing that exists by itself. A rock, a horse, your friend Thomas. An accident is a quality that exists in a thing. Red, tall, smelly, annoying. Here's the question. If Thomas becomes taller, has his substance changed? Answer, number. But if Thomas stops being Thomas entirely, then yes. This leads, naturally, to the unicorn debate. The master writes on the board, Unicornis est substantia vel accidens? Is a unicorn a substance, real thing, or an accident, fictional attribute? You chew your stylus. You know unicorns aren't real, probably, but they exist in texts, in bestiaries, in illuminated margins where monks doodled them alongside saints. So, are they conceptual substances? Historians still argue, your master says, whether medieval students believed logic could classify the imaginary. Was the unicorn's horn an accident? Or the defining feature? You suspect the real accident was skipping breakfast. The debate continues. A boy suggests that if we define unicorns as horses with horns, then we must first define horse and horn separately. This eats 20 minutes. Another proposes that since Christ is sometimes called a unicorn in poetry, it must be a metaphor. This earns him a cautious nod from the master and a future in theology. You, meanwhile, are stuck on another puzzle. Can a chicken be a person? Not in real life, but in logic class, personhood means something with rationality. The question is whether chickens can reason. Your friend insists his grandmother's hen once tricked a fox. Your master insists this proves nothing. You jot on your tablet, Si Galena ratiocinatur, est persona. If a chicken reasons, Is it a person? Philosophy looms. Your mind swims with Aristotelian categories and Boethian syllogisms. You have not eaten. You might hallucinate a talking chicken. You press on. Next up, fallacies, logical traps, beautiful nonsense, brain snares in Latin. Your favorite is petitio principii, begging the question. Example: why is logic hard? Because it's difficult. Useless, but strangely satisfying. Another is non sequitur. When someone says, "I studied grammar, therefore I deserve pie." That one hits close to home. But the crown jewel of today's lesson is the Sorite's paradox. If 1 grain of wheat is not a heap, and 2 grains are not a heap, at what point do we have a heap? You stare at your empty bowl from yesterday and consider whether 0 porridge counts as not a heap. This sort of thing goes on for quite some time. Eventually, your master asks a volunteer to define truth. One boy quotes Augustine. Another suggests truth is what is consistent. A third claims it's what the master says it is. He's not wrong. Now the master paces the room again. He holds up an object, a spoon. What is this? A spoon. Define it without naming it. An instrument for scooping? Wrong. A philosopher eats with his mind. This is the moment you know logic is not here to help you. It is here to train you, like a very fussy, very old-school boot camp. You recite another set of premises. All men are hungry. Students are men. Therefore, students are hungry. You sigh. That one lands hard. The master, as if reading your thoughts, declares, "You may now go to breakfast. But consider whether eating satisfies the substance of hunger, or merely its accidental expression." Someone groans audibly. You are not sure whether in pain or in admiration. You pack up your wax tablet, now smeared with chalk from your own hands, and file toward the refectory in silence. Not because you're being pious, but because you can barely think. Logic has left your head fogged and your stomach louder than your thoughts. You pass a small shrine on the way out. You offer a quick prayer, not for wisdom, but for bread. You would think that breakfast would be a moment of peace, a chance to sit, chew, maybe pretend to enjoy the flavorless joy of cold barley mash. But no, theology waits for no mouthful. You file into the refectory, a vaulted hall that smells like boiled roots and centuries of candle smoke. Wooden bowls are already set on the long tables, alongside uneven hunks of bread and a communal pitcher of something faintly resembling broth. You sit, you breathe, you lift your spoon, only for the master to raise a hand. "Today," he says, "you will ponder the eternal procession of the Son from the Father. Chew slowly." You groan internally. Outwardly, you nod, because chewing is not optional, and theology is never casual. This is not a drill. This is Aquinas before Oates. Welcome to the 5th subject of your morning. Your spoon hovers in midair as the master opens a small, leather-bound book, The Sentences of Peter Lombard. 4 books, endless commentary. No one has ever finished it with their sanity intact. He reads aloud, "Whether the divine essence is begotten." You pause your chewing. Of course, nothing says morning delight like Trinitarian metaphysics. The master launches into a short lecture. You pretend to eat while your mind scrambles to remember the difference between homoousios and homoousios. One means same substance, the other means similar substance. Empires have split over this single Greek iota. Literally. You swallow your broth, which tastes like sadness and faint onion. Across from you, Thomas, of course it's Thomas, is nodding with serene concentration while dunking his bread like he's solving salvation with every bite. Meanwhile, the boy next to you is biting a crust shaped like the Virgin Mary. He hesitates, then eats around it, respectfully. Today's discussion question: can God do something and still remain unchanged? You blink. You try to reword it in your head. If God wants something to happen, does that mean God changes by wanting it? You're not sure. You barely understand what's in your bowl, let alone the immutable nature of the divine will. Historians still debate, the master notes, whether students truly grasped the nuances of early scholastic theology, or whether they simply mimicked the structure of argument, hoping to understand it by osmosis. You suspect it's the latter, at least for you. Thomas seems to be having a great time. You reach for another piece of bread. Someone nearby is quietly reciting the Apostles' Creed under his breath. Another boy is muttering about angels. The subject veers again. Do angels occupy space? If they don't have bodies, can they be said to be in a place? A lively debate begins. You contribute. Maybe they pass through space without being bound by it? The master squints at you. Define pass. You regret everything. But you're not off the hook. Soon, it's your turn to answer a prompt. If God is omnipotent, can he create a stone so heavy he cannot lift it? Ah yes, the classic. You stall by sipping your broth. Then offer, if the question is self-contradictory, perhaps it reflects a limit in language, not in God. The master nods. A safe answer, almost clever. Try again tomorrow. You exhale. You mop up your sadness with the last bit of bread. You think you earned it. The topic shifts again. The soul. Specifically, when does it enter the body? Cue chaos. One boy says at birth, another says at conception. A third says, depends on which school you follow. You chime in with, Augustine was unsure. The master smiles. So are we all. You turn the spoon in your hand. It's wooden, cracked, and probably older than you. The grain has a stain shaped like a fish. You call it theologifish. It offers no answers, but somehow makes you feel less alone. Now someone's arguing about whether animals have souls. A chicken is mentioned. Again. You glance at the kitchen. The cook looks up. Does the chicken know? You wonder whether this topic ever ends. It doesn't. The master shifts gears one final time. The beatific vision. He speaks softly now, voice reverent. What does it mean to see God? Is it light? Is it presence? Is it understanding? Or something beyond comprehension? You go quiet. Everyone does. No jokes, no debates, just that question, hanging like morning incense in a cold chapel. For a moment, you feel still, and then finally, he stands. You have eaten. You have reasoned. Now you will recite. The groans are audible. Welcome to recitation, where your memory is tested and your dignity is optional. This is the final gauntlet of your morning. You shuffle from the table, smudging wax from your hands onto your robe. You glance down at your tablet, where half your theology notes are now indecipherable thanks to a rogue broth droplet. You straighten your back, clear your throat, and prepare for the final ordeal. You're standing now, in front of everyone. The entire class is silent. 30 pairs of eyes, one stern master, and exactly 0 ways out. Welcome to recitation, the final gatekeeper between you and the rest of your day. The part where you either remember everything you were supposed to memorize, or discover just how creatively your master can redefine the word feedback. He says your name, just your first name, nothing else. It lands like a bell toll. You swallow. You clutch your wax tablet like it might whisper the answers back to you. It will not. Recite the first declension, he says, and then proceed to the morning's theology. This should be easy. It's Rosa. You've been saying Rosa since you were old enough to hold a stylus, but now your brain is chewing its own cloak. Rosa, Rosai, Rosai, Rosam, Rosa. You pause. Is it Rosa again? No, wait. Yes. You go on. Rosae, Rosarum, Roses, Roses, Roses. The master's eyebrow doesn't move. That's a good sign. You breathe. Okay. Now the hard part. Now, he says, explain why God's essence is not divided by the persons of the Trinity. You feel like someone's thrown you off a metaphorical theological cliff. You take a breath. Because, though the persons are distinct, the divine essence is indivisible. He waits. You add, they share one substance, without confusion, division, or hierarchy. He nods slightly. Encouraged, you go on. The Father is not the Son, but both are fully God, as is the Spirit. You have no idea if what you're saying would pass the scrutiny of a university master, but you're pretty sure it sounds like something Thomas Aquinas might mumble before bed. The master moves on. You remain standing. This is the part where you must endure everyone else reciting. One by one, your classmates rise, tremble, fumble, and sometimes flourish. One boy forgets the passive forms of leger and starts conjugating audir instead. Another recites a perfectly formed logical syllogism, then ruins it by accidentally calling Aristotle Sir Applesauce. The master does not laugh. You suspect he hasn't laughed since the fall of Constantinople. As the line thins, your attention drifts. You spot sunlight creeping along the floorboards, slowly making its way toward the lectern. You think, if the light reaches the lectern before this is over, I win. It's a game you play often. So far, the light always loses. Someone is now explaining the beatific vision again. It's like seeing the sun, but inside your soul, he says. Another student follows up with, also, you don't need eyes because God is light and sight. The master raises a finger. Don't confuse metaphor with ontology. You glance at your wax tablet. There's a tiny doodle of a chicken wearing a halo. You didn't draw it. You suspect Thomas did. You'll never prove it. Eventually, your master sets down his pointer. The session is ending. He surveys the room like a general counting the survivors of a battle only he understands. You have recited, he says. You have remembered. Some of you. Marginally well. There's a silence where laughter would go, if anyone were brave enough. He nods once. You may go. There's no cheering. That would be unthinkable. But the air shifts. Lighter, looser. Robes rustle. Tablets are closed. Limbs stretch. You allow yourself a long blink. As you step into the corridor, your legs feel rubbery. You've been up since before the sun. You've memorized a page of Latin, a paragraph of Cicero, a chain of syllogisms, and enough theology to qualify as a heretic in at least 3 countries. You head for the cloister walk, where stone columns filter the light into slices and shadows. The garden smells of wet thyme and ash. You hear birds, sparrows, or students pretending to be them. It's hard to tell. You sit on the low stone wall, tablet in your lap, stylus spinning lazily between your fingers. You've survived another morning. and tomorrow you'll do it all again. But for now, you breathe. Your breath slows. The stone beneath you is cool but familiar. The garden hums gently, the same way it has for hundreds of years. You run your fingers along the grain of your wax tablet, now smudged and scuffed, a record of both effort and exhaustion. The wind stirs the ivy nearby, and somewhere, a bell tolls for the midday prayers. But it's distant, gentle, like it's not calling you, just reminding the world it still moves. You lean back slightly, eyelids half closed, your thoughts drifting like ink and water. Grammar melts into rhetoric. Rhetoric drifts into logic. Logic softens into the strange, flickering realm of theology. They blur now, not because you've forgotten, but because the morning has left them gently jumbled, like books stacked in a dream. You think about the unicorn again, about whether it's an accident or a substance. You think about Cicero shouting at Catiline, about God being both sight and light, about bread that tastes like nothing, and ideas that taste like something you can't quite name. Your stomach is quiet now. So is your mind. The sun reaches your feet. You don't move. You've earned this moment, not by solving everything, but by carrying it, reciting it, sitting with it, even when it made no sense. Tomorrow will come. So will Donatus. So will more recitation, more logic, more morning frost. But for now, just rest. Let your thoughts wander. Let your breath deepen. Let the lessons dissolve into background music, into the soft turning of medieval pages. You're safe here, quiet, still. And slowly, without quite realizing, you begin to drift.